G'day Art Snackers, my name is James of James Burke Creative and welcome back to another month of ArtSnacks Box Freestyle where we take the supplies from the February 2023 ArtSnacks Plus box and experiment with them to within an inch of their lives and then hopefully create a masterpiece for the hashtag ArtSnacks Challenge. This month's fun fact is I almost never learn how to use any of the applications or programs on my computer properly. I am trial by error all the way, and whenever I hit a snag, I go straight onto YouTube, watch about 2 minutes of the tutorial I need, and then go right back to it. So even though I use almost every application under the sun to make my business function, I technically don't really know how to use any of them properly. That's my fun fact. Let's get into the box and see what we have to play with today. Oh, my cat's jingling his bell. Here is the ArtSnacks Plus box for February 2023. Here's everything inside. Let's unwrap that little green burrito and take a closer look at what we'll be playing with today. First up in the Plus box, we have the Bienfang Graphics 360 marker paper pad, size 9x12. We also have a set of the Sakura Pigma Professional brush pens, set of 3. There's a fine brush, medium brush, and bold brush in that set in the Plus box. We'll be using 3 Copic Chow markers. I had the colors light pink, buttercup yellow, and aqua, as well as the Pentel Arts Hybrid Technica Gel Pen in size 05 and color black, and the Kuretake Zig Art and Graphic Twin RB and F marker. I had the English lavender color. There's the snack and the sticker. Let's get everything set up and get to playing. Alrighty, this experimentation is more of a swatch session because I have had experience with a lot of these types of supplies before, and fun fact actually, Copic markers were like my first ever I'm a real artist types purchase. It wasn't really me, my grand bought me a huge set of Copic Chow markers when I was 16, they were just my prized possession, so I've loved Copic markers for the longest time, and I really enjoy using them. I've used them on tons of different types of paper. Now this paper, and typically other marker papers, it's the cruelest irony ever, I actually kind of don't use the markers on. It's not that the paper itself is bad, but I tend to have a really hard time blending on marker papers. I don't know what it is. It's not just this paper, and I'm not trying to slam this paper. It is really beautiful. It is very smooth. It's very thin as well, which I think I enjoy as an art journaler because anything I do, if I want to transfer it to my art journal, it doesn't bulk it up too much just to cut it out and stick it in. So I do really like the paper, and it is a nice paper pad, but for some reason, getting really smooth gradient blends on marker papers has always been really difficult for me. I don't know if it's user error. If you can see me doing something wrong in this little swatch, let me know. I've always been taught to, keep the marker wet as you go over it, kind of go over the section you want to blend in together, maybe once or twice, bring back the other marker to try and blend it back in. Sometimes I've used a colorless blending marker to help it along its way, but you can really see it here with the aqua and the light pink. If I did that on a watercolor paper like I usually draw on, even though that's terrible for your alcohol markers because it will just bleed them dry, it really sucks the ink out of them. But if I did that on a watercolor paper, I don't tend to have the same issue with the blending. So I don't know if it's just me. Let's just call it me for now because it is a great paper pad, but I do have struggles with that. And alcohol markers, even though technically they won't function the same way as a water-based marker where you can use a paintbrush and kind of reactivate the ink to life, they are still wet. So that's one of those things that you have to be careful of as well when you're using especially like a really bold black inky pen or a brush pen. If that ink doesn't seep down into the substrate, whatever's still kind of half activated on the surface, the wetness of that brush pen will drag it across the paper. So if you've got really light colors like a yellow specifically, you'll really notice it. So, I mean, let's just call it what it is. I faced some challenges this month for the ArtSnacks Challenge, really trying to figure out how I was going to go about using these supplies to get a really fantastic result. So here's a bit of my experimentation. I did start with this little picture because I thought, you know what, when in doubt, just draw a picture and color it in. That usually gives me a good idea of where I'm going. And then I decided to get into a bit more fashion. I've been back on my fashion illustration grind. You know what I'm like? I switch in between styles and and disciplines every 4 seconds, but I'm back on fashion illustration right now. And then all of a sudden, kind of clicked to me because I only had, I felt like yellow was kind of the skin tone that I was going to go with, but it was giving me very much The Simpsons. So I decided to go for a Marge Simpson type fashion figure, and I really loved how this came out. It kind of spurred me onto a little creative frenzy where I thought maybe I could do like a whole Marge Simpson fashion collection. I mean, it's something I would never do. I don't even really watch The Simpsons. I used to when we were younger. My brother and I weren't really allowed to watch it, so we would just sneak it sometimes. I was a bit more of an American Dad watcher when I got older. My brother would watch Family Guy, I'd watch American Dad, but it was kind of the only things we could watch together that we both enjoyed. Everything else he just loved, like war and action movies, and I just loved anything that an 8-year-old would watch in a Disney film. So we didn't have very compatible tastes, but Family Guy and American Dad and The Simpsons would be things that we could kind of watch together. So yeah, that's really my only experience with it, but I really got onto this Marge Simpson fashion kick. This I decided to give her a bit of corporate realness and just see if I could, do a whole fashion figure. I figured that sketching it out with the lavender was a really nice way to get the sketch down there without it being too bold, because it was a really beautiful light lavender color. And then using the pens to bring out fine details and the brush pens to just kind of accentuate the lines. You can see it's a very broken line work style for the illustration. So you're just kind of, I like to say it's sharpening or it's just defining. You're not actually outlining. You're just using the brush pen to pick up, usually curves or very dramatic changes in the angles. And you just, place the lines there. You don't really outline the whole thing. So I was having a lot of fun doing that, but you will see in a minute when I came to experiment with how that illustration would go, I did not end up doing it. I ran into a bit of a crisis trying to start and restart, and it wasn't working for me. So we'll see that in a second. I was very excited at this point to get started on my little Marge Simpson fashion collection, and I went to sketch it out, and I just had one little mishap, right? Like the leg just didn't look the way I wanted it to look, and I thought, I can't, I have to start again. And I figured at that point, maybe I could just get a pencil and I'll start from there, but I really do try to challenge myself to only use what's in the box. So I thought, you know what, because the whole body might be a bit of a challenge to get a whole ton of, really well-drawn bodies down there in that marker, why don't I try and zoom in on it and just do the torso and the top half, and then maybe I could cheat not having to draw the full body. But then when I drew that, I just for some reason got carried away. I drew the hair and then I didn't like it, and I just thought, no, I have to get rid of that as well. And I stopped. I mean, you don't see this in the video, but I stopped for about 20 minutes to think, what am I going to do? Because it doesn't take a lot for me to suddenly feel really discouraged, especially when I feel good about something and I feel like I'm going to do a good job. And then my first couple of attempts don't go well. And then suddenly I feel very lost. I was having a bit of a crisis. So I just decided to stop, and I thought, you know what? After about 20 minutes of just soul searching, I thought, I want to go back to something, comfortable, something that I haven't done in a long time, something that I know is a surefire win for me. Like, it is so good sometimes just to go and do something will be a good time for you. And that doesn't mean it's going to be the best thing you've ever drawn or like the best piece of art you've ever created. Most of the time it's probably not going to be, but it is something you can do and you can have a good time doing. I feel like there are those kind of default, drawings or projects or like paintings that people can do. They kind of just go back to it. For a lot of people, it's actually swatching. I know a lot of people who will just go back to, they're having a bit of an off day with the painting, or the strokes aren't going the way they need to, so they'll just go back to swatching their art supplies, and that is just a surefire win, right? It's something you can do that you feel like you can get from point A to point Z, and you're fine. So I figured I'd do this. I haven't done this in a long, long time. A whole page of faces. It's something that, I love repetition. I just love to do a mindless, kind of repetitive, factory-style task and just do it over and over and over and over again. To exhaustion. So you can see I've done all the heads and all the sketches in that lavender pen, the lavender brush pen, and then I've decided to come in and put all of the skin tone of that yellow on. So it's still very Simpson-esque. We can say it's inspired by The Simpsons, I guess. Just a completely different, Marge Simpson project, but I decided to come in, and each time I did something, it was like a factory assembly line. What I did to one, I had to do to all of them. And it just is it's like a really easy way for you to go about doing something. I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy, right? Maybe you would hate this. If you hate repetition, this would be the worst thing for you to do. But for me, it's a really easy way for my mind to tackle something that I know I can do. I know I can draw a face because I draw them every single time I pick up a pencil. I love to draw a feminine, fashion type face. That's something that I love to do. So I know I'm going to enjoy it. And I know that if I just decide to do it over and over and over again, I'm going to fill up my page. I'm going to have tons of fun, going from step to step. And it's just, I mean, for me, I just love seeing how they all look. Like, they're exactly the same, every single one, but they look so different. Like, everything I've done to one face, I've done to all of them. And I've tried to do it the exact same way, but they're a different size, their proportions a little off. Sometimes the stroke went a little weird on one face and then it went a little better on another face. And you just never know which one's going to turn out and which one's going to look good. It's just a mystery until you're finished. So I don't really know what to call this. I mean, it is a page of faces, but to me, this kind of approach is very much in my head like factory style, production style, just going from point A and then doing 25 point A's and then going to point B and doing 25 point B's. And I just really, really enjoyed it. You do your one, if it's something you do like to enjoy, like a face, I mean, I don't really have to think too hard about drawing a face. It feels like your brain kind of switches off and this process just kind of takes over. I find that this is how you get into a flow state. Have you ever heard of that flow state before? I read somewhere that it's apparently to achieve getting into that flow state, you have to do something that your brain is partially active in, but for the most part, it's kind of a repetitive brainless process, like a brainless task. So you're kind of stimulated by it, but it's not something that requires you to think too much. This for me is that. It's that production style, factory style, flow process kind of illustration. Just doing something that I love to do repeatedly. There you go. And with markers that I really enjoy. I love Copic markers. I really love this color palette too. It was really pretty. I would typically use a brighter yellow, but the Buttercup was kind of pretty. This color palette I call like a printer primaries. When you learn primaries as a kid and it's red, yellow, blue, but I think of the primaries that I like the most, and it's the primaries from a printer ink tank. So cyan, magenta, and yellow. And so this is just a version of that, right? You've got that aqua, which is a beautiful kind of cyan color. You've got the magenta, which in this case is that light pink. And then the yellow, instead of it being a bright lemon yellow, this is a soft buttery yellow. And I like to explore all the derivatives of those printer primaries. So sometimes a really, really strong, rich magenta color, and then a really soft pastel cyan color, like all kind of different versions of it, just a whole bunch of different shades of the printer primaries, but it's one of my favorite color palettes. So this kind of all worked out, and the lavender was just a really pretty soft touch. And I think they turned out really wonderfully. I love to do that little line work noodle hair pattern to bring them all together. I mean, I used to do this when I first started with art journaling back in 2015. And I would do this over and over and over again. It really brought me back. I had a really wonderful time doing it. Enjoyed lots of the art supplies that I used. A standout, obviously, Copic Chow markers. I love them. They really bring me back to feeling professional with my markers for the first time as a teenager. Great for fashion illustration, any kind of graphic rendering. But this is my final piece. I hope you enjoyed watching all of that come together, and I'm excited to see what you guys come up with this month for the ArtSnacks Challenge. I'll join you in a second for the outro, but enjoy this B-roll footage, and until next month, goodbye. There we go, that is our ArtSnacks challenge for this month. I hope you enjoyed watching that video and the process of that piece coming together. If you would like to join ArtSnacks, you can do so using the code James10 at checkout for 10% off. And when you've done your ArtSnacks challenge, don't forget to share all your work with us in the Mix community and on social media with the hashtag ArtSnacks Challenge. We love to see it. Until next month, have a great time. Bye.